It's a Thursday, which means we have Anne Laure Jackson with us here with Pure 24/7 Radio. Hello, Anne.
Hello, good to be here.
We are talking about all things sensory health. I'm going to check my microphone really quickly because I have a suspicion my computer does naughty things. Yes, it did. Let me just turn that down ever so slightly. There we go. That's better. Right. Yes. We talk about sensory health. We talk about all sorts of things. And I think we've done 30, if my memory serves.
Oh, we're getting there. We're chalking it up bit by bit. Each like 5 is a celebration. It's like, yeah,
I think it's 30-ish. It's somewhere around there. I wrote it down and lost the number, but it's cool. It's really good. And hopefully we're helping people, which is what I want to do, and which is what you want to do.
Yeah, it is. It's lovely. I was like to so many places today, just going from one to the other and going into one school. And it was really lovely. I have videos online, and this fella came up to me in the school and he wanted to shake my hand. So I said, hello. And I shook his hand and he said, I do your videos. And it's just like, I've seen you on TV kind of thing. And it's just like, it's the first time that I've kind of felt famous. And it's just like, oh, but he was so delightful. And thankfully he was really happy to see me. It's like, I know you, I do your videos. And he wanted to shake my hand. So yeah, bless him. So it is lovely. It's, it's nice to be able to help people. And he's obviously feeling the difference in himself, which is lovely. Yeah.
Which is fabulous, because I think sometimes I was having a completely different conversation, but it's the same kind of conclusion. Sometimes we feel like there's nothing we can do because we see an object in front of us and it's just this gigantic mountain. And I think, how can we scale that mountain? You know, it's 30,000 feet high, but you put one foot in front of the other and you start walking up, and eventually you'll take the 30,000 feet and you'll be at the top. But what you don't do is jump from zero to top. So it sounds like he's working along that quite well.
Yeah, it was lovely. And to go with what you're saying, I was in another school yesterday talking about the sensory super system that we've got for education. And he was so supportive, and he was there trying to encourage his staff that this is going to be something that they're all going to take on as a whole school staff, which is just superb. But he says, yeah, how do you eat an elephant? You know, one bite at a time. Not that I'm recommending we eat elephants, but it's exactly that same thing. It's one small step, one little bite, just do what we can. So that's why I say, you know, but bite-sized pieces of training, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, or a half-hour podcast, you know, among the blurb and along the chat and the giggles and everything else. So it's, just catch and step forward. Moving forward is a good thing.
Yes, but baby steps sometimes. It's very small steps.
Yeah.
But forward progress is forward progress, even if it's, you know, a tiny shuffle or a big leap. It doesn't matter. It just keep going.
Yeah. And that's what I say. It's funny, like, because the system is broken down into steps, because it's like you might be able to go really quickly and you might just want to, you know, binge watch and do stuff and be really into it for a weekend, and you can get like 7 steps all done. But then actually you've run out of energy, or life happens, or you have to move house, or something else happens. It's just like, okay, let's pause this. And you just pause it. And then whenever you have the capacity to do one little baby step, then you move on and you move forward. And over time, looking back, that's why hindsight, well, not necessarily hindsight, but looking back is a lovely thing, because you don't realize how far you have come until you do just pause and think, right, yeah, that we have come pretty far in this journey so far.
I have a car-related question to do with the senses, because I am because the car that we've been given has been sitting in a garage. I thought I'll put it on a recharge just to keep the battery topped up. However, it's got a big plastic cover, so I can see one of the terminals. I need to access 2 of the terminals. So I sort of fiddle around with the back underneath. I can't see, I'm working blind. I can feel the metal of the negative terminal. So I know roughly where it is. And it took me ages. It took 3 of us to work out how to get a clip lined sort of at the back of the engine under a thing and tucked on. The next day I did the same thing again, because I don't like to just leave it trickle charging forever. And it was much easier. And I sort of got the clip and went straight under and clipped it. Now, I know we've talked about like finger and thumb and the ability to do buttons, because we know instinctively through a system where the bit in between our finger and thumb is. Why was it so much easier for me to do it on my own the second day and so hard the first?
That is due to your motor memory. Those plans that get put down, it's what pianists and instrumentalists, anybody who is skilled at any particular job, or whether it be driving itself, it takes us ages to learn these motor patterns of where to put your gear stick, or is it your shift stick if you're listening in the States, or whatever even if you have it, automatic cars, you don't have them anyway. But the amount of experience of how much to turn the wheel, how much pressure, how much proprioceptive input you need to be able to turn the wheel in order to make it go where you want it to go and in the right kind of way. Everything that we do takes that conscious effort to connect our brains and our bodies in order to do it. Learning handwriting for the first time is a lot more laborious because there are things that the brain has never done before, the body's never done before, or it's done in a different way that it's never done before. So it has to learn a new motor plan, a plan to do your motor actions, your physical actions to do something. So you were like scrambling around in the dark or trying to feel things. So all of that experience was going into your brain of, this is where I put my body. And if I twist my shoulder, I might be able to get underneath it. Or if I move my hand this way, and your brain already knows what you're feeling for. So the discrimination, your tactile discrimination, is increased. You are paying much more attention to what your touch senses are telling you, and you are remembering it because you are heightened. You're paying an awful lot of attention to it. So those memories stay in your brain. So going back to it today, your body remembers the position that it was in because of those motor engrams and that motor planning that it has already gone through. And because you must be relatively sensory integrated, it remembered it well, so that it was much easier to go and do that same thing. And your tactile system was working well enough, and your proprioceptive system was working well enough. And were you actually under the car?
On top of the car, my hand across the top of the engine and sort of just down behind it where the negative terminal was, under a plastic kind of cover thing.
Okay, so you go that way. So if you've got your head tilted over, then your vestibular system's involved at the same, at the same time. So there are three big senses that we work in sensory integration processing. Is the vestibular sense, which is there in our inner ears, tells us whereabouts our head position is. Our proprioceptive sense, which is our muscles and joints, and then the tactile system for what we can actually feel. So, but there was me obviously knowing nothing about cars, because there was me thinking you were underneath the car going all the way.
No, on the top. But I tell you what threw me though is when I was trying to feel, I knew that there was like a rubber or plastic like sheath on the outside, and then eventually, if I followed that up far enough, you get to the metal which attaches to the top of the battery. Mm-hmm. Of course, metal feels very different from, I don't know, plastic rubbery thing. Mm. But today it was really easy. As I ran my finger blind at the back, I thought, oh, that's the plastic, that's the metal. And it was somehow much easier to identify the change in material, which just blew my mind of how does my little finger able to say that's plastic, that's metal. I don't know, my finger didn't do that, but just what I mean.
Oh, isn't it remarkable? Utterly remarkable. Yeah, but literally it is. It's your little finger just rubbing it like on one side. You haven't got your whole hands. You've just got this tiny little surface area, and your brain's going bing, this is metal, bing, this is plastic. Or utterly remarkable.
It just blew me. I think about mechanics, and they always say they don't like to wear with gloves. A lot of mechanics do, because they like to feel the metal, and if they can't feel it, even if it's like a latex glove, it feels different. So we can't feel what we're touching, which today I had another appreciation of that, I guess, because I couldn't have felt on the back blind in the dark under a piece of plastic with a latex glove, and I would have never known the difference. I'd have had to feel the join, and how that'd be really impressive. But yeah, that was amazing. Yeah.
Utterly remarkable design of the skin. Totally. And that is where it's the subtleties. Those are the kind of things that I work with people, because they don't often realize that other people don't feel the same way that they don't feel. So we would say if they couldn't feel the difference between the metal and the plastic, that's an under reactivity and under responsiveness. So you have to be able to feel that your finger's touching something in your first place, which is that responsivity. And then you've got to be able to discriminate. So the fact that you could actually feel it, you knew what you were looking for, and then you knew exactly how to describe it. You wanted to find the connection between the metal and the plastic. Now, other people wouldn't be able to find those names that discriminate between a metal and a plastic. They know they'll be touching something, but they wouldn't be able to tell you what it was. So there are various levels of sensory processing, but that ability to discriminate with the tiniest of spaces, of areas on our skin is quite remarkable. And we have most of our tactile receptors in our mouth. And that's why lots of things that we do around the mouth are so satisfying, because it fires the brain with lots of lovely things, whether it be food or other things that people choose to put in their mouths. Hands are the next biggest, and then feet. So that's why it's really lovely to be able to feed the hands, as it literally, but feed it with sensory stuff. Feed the mouth, feed the hands, and feed the feet, because other parts of our body aren't that well designed for discrimination. You don't go around checking things, or you'd never think to put your elbow in to go and find that piece of tubing or that piece of metal. It absolutely is our hands, not just because they are fine and able to do those tiny little movements, but also because of the massive amount of sensory receptors that we have in these areas, so that we can function amazingly with them.
I was there on the car and thought, I've got to ask Anne about the sensory perspective on this, because I was just fascinated by the fact I could run my finger over the plastic and the metal, and I've not really, and I guess we've done 30 of these or something, but I've never really thought about it consciously, of this is a sensory thing going on.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, I can feel that I've got to ask you about this, hence why I did it.
I'm glad you did, because it's those little things that you think, oh wow, aren't we amazing?
Yeah,
and how that can really get in the way of life. So if you can't, because it feels like people are walking around wearing gloves, and they're not able to function. They don't have the confidence. They can't write. They can't handwrite very well. They are clumsy because they just don't have that finesse coming from their senses.
I'm talking about things in mouths. Is that why little toddlers get everything they can and just shove it in the mouth? Is that a sensory thing?
It is a sensory thing, big time, because of the tactile receptors. And there comes a point when the eyes take over, and therefore they don't need to do that anymore, because the eyes can't feel. It sees over time. It has that programming that you were just talking about as to where to position your body in order to fix whatever it was you wanted to fix. That's where the eyes will take over in time, if the brain has had enough experience of seeing something that's plastic. So if I have my pair of scissors, I am holding up a pair of scissors for those who are listening podcast-wise. It's a pair of scissors and they have plastic handles. I can see that I have orange plastic handles, and therefore I think they're going to be cold, and I think they're going to be hard, and I am going to be able to put my fingers in them to be able to make them work. And so therefore, that's what my eyes have interpreted. Therefore, I can then go in and just judge and not even make any difference. If I had never seen scissors before, I might not have a clue. But if I've never seen kind of like plastic like this before, I would need to explore it. I would need to get my hands involved and think, oh, right, what does this feel like? And use words, describe words. Is it hard or soft or squishy or whatever, to try and get the brain connecting that information with the eyes, so that I don't have to go around feeling everything. So that I don't have to go up to a screen to try and interpret what's going on the other side. Because actually I can see you, I can see your face, I can see your beard. I don't need to try and touch through the screen, because I've touched a beard before. I know what that feels like. So it's the eyes take over, but the body has to know what things feel like first. And often, because littlies, they are really well developed in the mouth, because when they suckle, that is their number one organ. That is the sense that they use more than anything. They use it for regulation. That's why we have dummies. So the sucking, the chewing, the suck and the swallow, the breathe, everything starts off in that little person in their mouth. And that's why, toddlers or littlies and babies, lots of things go in the mouth to get that sensory perception before the eyes can then take over. And then they don't need to go around licking everything, or they shouldn't need to go around licking everything, or sticking everything in their mouths. But lots of my people still do. So
I think adults have the same problem, don't they? If they walk into a toy shop and you've got a bloke there, oh, let's pick this up and play with that, and I could just see the wives going, put your hands in your pockets. You can't touch the stuff on the shelves. Actually, I was thinking.
At least they're not licking it. I was just thinking, where are you going with this? And it's like, oh no, We're just at a hand exploration. That's fine. Yeah.
That's fine. I was thinking about a film. I remember watching the film. I've forgotten who's in it. I don't remember anything about it. But this one scene which blew me away, because there's this moment where these two kids at a summer camp in the States, and one of them is blind. And she asks the guy that she's with when they're out for a walk, what does a cloud look like? And he says, well, it was white. It's in the sky. And she said, what's white? And they went on and on about all this stuff. And I seem to remember the end was he said, it looks like a cotton wool ball, which she could hold, and she understood what it felt like. And he said, well, it kind of looks like a cotton wool ball. At which point she said, I think I know what it looks like now, which is fascinating.
But I thought that was brilliant, like cotton wool ball. I thought that was just superb. And it's using that tactile sense to be able to explain something, because visually they're not going to be able to take over. But they can understand and visualize things internally by what they sense and what they can feel and interpret.
Which just, it made me think about that film, that scene just now, because it's fascinating. How do you describe what you can see to somebody who can't? Because, well, it's white. What's white? Well, everything you see is dark, isn't it? Well, I don't know. I can't see. I don't know what white, light and dark is. So it was fascinating. How do you describe, in terms of visual terms, what you can see? And I seem to remember cotton wool ball was, I thought, yeah, that's what it feels. That's what it looks like. It looks like a cotton wool ball.
Yeah. Great.
Right. Let's grab a question that I've got in front of me here. Because you talked about this a little while ago, it seems most pertinent. How can schools and educators create an inclusive environment for children with sensory processing challenges?
Oh, well, if I go off today, poor fella, there is going to be some occasions actually where it is really tough to do within the school system, but we can do whatever we can to help. So his particular needs this morning was that heat was a big issue and smell is a big issue. Now that is hard. If you've got 30 other people in the class and smell is an issue, it's like, right, okay, we need to address the smell issue. How can we replace smells? How can we make things differently? And this is a secondary school, so it's not even primary schools. The teachers are well able to adapt their own particular classroom. You move into secondary and they have to move around from class to class, or middle school, high school, whatever. There's a lot more that the individual has to take responsibility for themselves. So, temperature wise, that is hard. Also because he kept forgetting his coat all over the place. But it's allowing them to strip down to a very, very, take off the ties, take off the blazers, just just acknowledge that temperature is an issue. If he wants it really cold, it may be that he needs to have a bit of a cold spell in something, really cooling himself off, going outside, going in a cupboard, whatever he needs just for a few moments to bring that body temperature down before he goes into the classroom. He has been going in, opening the windows. Everyone else is absolutely freezing and he's quite happy. So it's either he's in the class or he's not. So we need to find their sensory thumbprint. We need to find what are the issues for that particular individual, and then try and work with them as best possible. So those were two biggies. But also, like, he would squat. I love this. He's a lovely squatter. He would squat on the chair. He didn't want to sit on the chair. Couldn't sit still. So for me, telling me massively his proprioceptive, vestibular, and potentially tactile system isn't well integrated, and we really need to help this fella. So in the short term, we'd be looking at different types of chairs for him. So maybe he can actually rock. Maybe he can sit on a ball chair so that he doesn't have to squat on a chair, which is pretty unsafe because he would also rock the chair. So like not sitting great. And rocking. And like this is secondary school. It's just like, he's a big fella. It's like, So we look at different seating options, find out what their issues are, and then see what what accommodations can be made, what little changes can happen, either about how long he spends in the class, what he needs to do to prepare himself to go into the class, what does he need to do to get from class to class, and for him in particular, how can we keep him as cool as possible, and all the different strategies that there might be to keep him cool so that he either doesn't leave, because that's what he does when it gets too hot, he just leaves. or he freezes the class. So like, oof, we've got to find a solution. It's the first time I've met them this morning, so it'll be interesting to see how we go.
I'm fascinated about that journey a little bit. I remember at secondary school, we had a building that was very long, like most secondary schools. It's, double level. And some of the classrooms, I didn't have to go in very often, thankfully. Occasionally I went in them just because we had to. And it was so hot because the sun would just bake all afternoon. Massive window glass all the way along. I'm thinking, do we need this much glass? Really? Can we not, close some of it off? And the teachers would do what they could, but there was no budget, there was no curtains, there were no thermal blinds, which we'd have today more normally. And I just remember we would fall asleep frequently. So would the teacher, thinking this isn't healthy. This isn't a good learning environment, or there's nowhere else we can go. Well, should we just not bother coming to the class? Because really, we're not really doing any work on a hot day. We're just sitting there sipping water and just counting the seconds to leave.
Yeah. And it's really interesting now. Some of the schools that I'm working in are meeting. It's not necessarily their academic level at which they're being judged at. So some have gone past just being in chronological 30 kids of the same age in the same place. Some of them are moving to actually, well, you might be the year above, or you might be the year above that. And academically, there is a blend starting to happen. So to meet those that happen to be particularly quick at picking things up and are more academically able, that some of those classes are happening for academics. But in the same way, we can have classrooms that are really good for meeting sensory needs, in which case it doesn't matter about what academic level they're at. What's good is that they're in a good place, they're cool, they're happy, they're content, whether it be that they need to swing on something to learn, whether it be they need to rock on the chair, whether they need to bounce, whatever it is that's needed. Those classrooms are starting to have more flexibility, really, in how they teach, because actually teachers are that skilled that they can come in at different levels academically, but they can't if your child is asleep. If they're asleep because it's too hot, you can't teach them a thing anyway. So if you've got a child happy who's one swinging and someone else is bouncing on a ball, but actually that's not a problem for them, then you can teach then at the level that the child and the student is at. So it's meeting their sensory needs first, rather than, it's a progression from being more flexible as far as their academic needs. So schools really do have it cut out for them these days.
I was just thinking about that. The mountain idea of we don't just go from the bottom to the top. If you've got somebody who can't sit still, if it's good, I can picture it in a school. But here's a chair for you to use, and it's squeaky, and every time they move, it's just we can do better. Well, this is all we've got. And I guess part of what you would then come in to do is, well, actually, there's something we can do with the child. There's something we can do in the classroom. There are things we can do before and after, because rather than going kind of from far left to far right just to fix a problem, actually, if we all moved in just a little bit, actually it would be less noticeable, and more subtle movements would give us a better overall result.
I know. I need to go and speak to the head teacher, actually, just to see what are those general accommodations that can generally be put around, also so that the student, excuse me, isn't seen to be different, isn't seen to be picked out. That actually in every classroom there are different seating options. In every classroom there's a little bit of something that is different, so that folks don't feel bizarre or different. Yeah, just children don't want to feel different, do they? When they're in school, it's they just know they'll get picked on if they are.
They want to blend. I did. Please don't let me stick out at any point, because then everyone's at you. I remember that I think I mentioned this before, one of the schools I was at, secondary school, and it had been set up specifically as a school for regular kind of non-disability children, badly worded, but also for people with visual impairments. So not blind children necessarily, but people who would have difficulty seeing like everybody else. So we had white lines on the steps at the edge. There were white lines along the floors, so they had something as a visual clue to walk from where the classrooms were. So there are things that we can do that really they're actually good for everybody anyway.
Yeah, that's lovely. And I think if there is anybody in the education system listening, take your things and get the whole class to try them also. And you will find that those who need them, those who really benefit from either sitting on something strange or fidgeting, because also this fella, he was up and down with the mouse, just playing with it, loving the click. And I thought, actually, if he had poppers instead, he wouldn't be messing around with the mouse quite so much, because his fingers would be really happy getting that proprioceptive feedback, doing something. I mean, I was in a one-to-one observing him with one of his classroom assistants, and she was utterly brilliant with him, absolutely brilliant. And they were having this amazing conversation, but he was on his chair rocking. He'd come out at that point. He was on his chair rocking. He was fiddling and doing all of this kind of thing. And it's just like, but that is how some of our children need to learn, and are much, much happier learning. He was one of the more extreme, but he was in a mainstream school. So, and I'm working in special schools as well. So it's, let's just give everybody the opportunity to have a go at some of these things, and then folks don't stand out so much, and also those who really do need it will benefit. But ultimately, most of us will benefit to some degree anyway.
And I guess for all of us, it's an education. If you're in a classroom and there's 30 people there and they're all 14, 15 years old, someone's on a chair, quite happy to engage because they're on a chair that just doesn't, isn't rigid. When that person's going to get older, go to university, and they're a manager of a small company or something, they're going to be thinking, oh, well, maybe we can help this person in the same way, because it's not just fixing a problem, it's educating into the future, isn't it?
It is, absolutely. It was superb to go into. I really am in schools. I went to another school yesterday, and the admin person, she had a standing table. And I was just like, oh, brilliant. So like postural wise, she's able to stand. It's much easier to move, to keep alert. The vestibular system, physically, it keeps you much more mobile if you're able to use a standing desk rather than sitting at your desk all day, which is not a great thing for any of us to be doing. So yeah, but it was great to be able to see that just accommodations are brought into when you're an adult, whether you're dealing with, children, whether you're dealing with someone, everybody needs these little accommodations and adaptations.
And we make them naturally anyway for ourselves, don't we? So why would we think that 30 children can just sit there in the same chairs, same tables, and all be able to learn at the same pace, at the same rate, in the same way? Because we know that that's not possible. So in the same context, the seating needs to be different for some people, and the pens need to be different. I remember there were some people who had these really chunky pens because they were struggling to hold, because they got struggle with dexterity, or I think one person had broken their finger, so they couldn't hold a normal pen. So one of the teachers said, try this thing. And it was this oversized sort of weird looking pen thing, but they could actually hold it and write with it. I mean, that's not a huge modification, but all of a sudden that child is able to get back into learning.
Absolutely.
Right. Well, thank you. I love where we go because I never know where we're going to go, especially in my brain. So we've covered how to charge a battery when you can't see the negative terminal using your sensory health. And we've covered things like seating in schools and what we can do to help people to learn. Thank you, Anne Laure Jackson, again for more. It's just fascinating. I'm really starting to think more and more when I do something like trying to charge a battery when I can't see the negative terminal, what's going on with my senses. And I really did think, this is fascinating. I've never, ever thought about it like this before.
I love it.
So thank you. If you want to know more about Anne Laure Jackson, best thing you can do is go to our website, pure247radio.org/ALJ, and that will take you to all the information about Anne and what she does and how she can help you in your life, work or school. And if you've got any questions for her, by the way, you can send them through to here. We'll ask them to Anne. Email us at the bottom of the website, hello@pure247radio.org. Anne, thank you as ever.
Wonderful to see you. All the very best.
And we'll see you again next week.
Bye.
Pure 24/7 Radio is listener supported, which means we are free, online and always pure because of the generous support of our listeners. If you would like to contribute financially, please visit pure247radio.org. If you'd like to find out how we use your money, please visit the Our Cost section. Any donation of any size will help keep us on air and broadcasting for free. Thank you.